from your local election headquarters, the only locally produced political talk show discussing the issues that matter to you. This is Big Country Politics on KTAB.
Thanks for being here for this week's edition of Big Country Politics. I'm Victor Sotelo. Here's a look at the political headlines that we'll be covering from across the nation, state, and the big country. We look at the changes discussed at the Abilene City Council meeting, the political news that traveled from Washington to right here in the Lone Star State, and the divisive addition to the United States Supreme Court. Getting on to city news, the Abilene City Council had a rare Tuesday meeting this past week, and among other things, City Council received a report on how some tax dollars are spent. After several months, an audit looking at the effectiveness of the hotel occupancy tax, also known as the hot tax, was finally wrapped up. KTAB's city reporter Nathan Grieve gives us a report on the findings.
There's no secret that a lot of criticism was communicated throughout our city about the hot tax. This provides an opportunity to validate that we do a good job.
The tax charged on hotel rooms in Abilene goes into a fund that covers work at the convention center, and the Chamber of Commerce deals the rest out to the Cultural Affairs Council and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Simply put, the audit says those dollars are well spent.
Really, the proof is in the pudding. We have revenue and tourism growth over the last 10 years. Tourism has increased significantly in Abilene. The parties are really working effectively, especially if we just look at the bottom line. It's really benefiting the community.
The bulk of the recommendations made weren't sweeping changes, but ways to refine the process.
There are local events. There are other events that, even though they generated hotel nights, we may want to take a look at just as a group and say, should this count toward a hot eligible event?
While some took exception at undergoing an audit at first, it seems to have bolstered the city's position that tourism is thriving. In Abilene, with coverage you can count on, Nathan Grieve, KTAB News.
All right, thank you, Nathan. Other recommendations call for groups who benefit from the hot tax to work together to increase tourism. Also on the docket for the Abilene City Council was a progress report of the new Abilene Law Enforcement Center. You'll remember a new facility on South First Street is in the midst of a multi-million-dollar renovation. Council addressed purchasing for network gear and web servers for the new center and Abilene City Hall. And a study of Abilene's water services made an appearance at the Abilene City Council meeting. It revealed that the rate of what customers pay will likely stay the same for a few years. We're told the study accounts for capital improvement projects as it relates to the water bill. If the council wants to change the fee structure, that could, however, lead to slight increases on your water bill. Signs, they're all over town and have been regulated by the city based on content, based on what they say. But those regulations could be seeing some changes in the near future. KTAB's Jessica Rank explains how a Supreme Court decision and complexity of the new local ordinance are leading to possible revisions.
Everywhere you look, you're bound to see one. Signs, historically regulated based on their content, but that's all about to change. The Planning and Zoning Commission is considering changing its current sign ordinance to comply with a recent Supreme Court case.
They had different rules for churches and for businesses. And so the church that wanted to put up signs said that's unconstitutional.
Discriminating because there were different size qualifications for each, prompting change to Abilene's current city ordinance.
Definitions that we're suggesting be stricken, they're content-based. There's no way, for example, you would know whether something is a garage sale sign or a government sign unless you read it. And so we're trying to take all of those out.
A change that seemed simple to the commission until they started reading into the ordinance, finding other changes that needed to be made.
The two items that are going to possibly be controversial is what we do with trailers and trucks being used as signs, as a sign, in a seemingly permanent way. And the other one is what are the rules for temporary signs?
The question becoming whether or not to send it on to City Council, making only some changes.
If we've got three specific issues, or temp issues or whatever we need to, but let's take those issues and address those issues and not try to open the whole code back up and go through the whole thing again.
An issue that's since been tabled. In Abilene with coverage you can count on, Jessica Rank, KTAB News.
And as Jessica said, this item was tabled as it was in the past. All right, some political news came from Washington to us here in the Lone Star State. Vice President Mike Pence was in Dallas Monday, hitting the campaign trail for two Republicans facing re-election in November, Representative Pete Sessions and Senator Ted Cruz. Sessions facing Democratic challenger Colin Allred, and Cruz will face U.S. Representative Beto O'Rourke. Texans plan to head to the polls November 6th. All right, keeping an eye on America, we now turn to the news in Texas. To our nation's capital. A highly scrutinized event was the confirmation of now Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He was publicly sworn into his position Monday, drawing different reactions across the country, many protesting outside the Supreme Court. On Kavanaugh's first day in court, protesters were commonplace after the Senate's decision to add Kavanaugh to the high court. But for some, like for Big Country Congressman Jody Arrington, the move was a signal of hope for the nation's future.
Hey everybody, today was an historic day for this country, for our Constitution, and for our children and grandchildren. I want to say I am so excited and grateful to have a new justice of the Supreme Court as qualified, as capable, and as committed to the Constitution and rule of law as Justice Brett Kavanaugh will.
And after a weeks-long tense battle over his nomination, both Democrats and Republicans are vowing that despite the new swearing in, the fight isn't over.
Justice Brett Kavanaugh, President Trump, and the Republican leadership took a victory lap at the White House Monday night, taking part in a ceremonial swearing in.
So help me God.
The only other justices to have had the White House event were Justices Samuel Alito in 2006 and Stephen Breyer in 1994. Kavanaugh was privately sworn in Saturday after the Senate voted 50-48 to confirm him following claims that he had sexually assaulted women 3 decades ago. Kavanaugh denied the allegations.
On behalf of our nation, I want to apologize to Brett and the entire Kavanaugh family for the terrible pain and suffering you have been forced to endure.
My goal is to be a great justice for all Americans.
GOP Senate leaders are also claiming victory.
I couldn't be prouder of the Senate Republican Conference.
Meanwhile, the top Democrat in the House, Nancy Pelosi, issued a release saying she would file a Freedom of Information Act on what was in the FBI supplemental background investigation. With midterm elections for congressional seats less than a month away, leaders in both parties hope the Kavanaugh showdown plays big at the polls. Republicans hope Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp's North Dakota seat will be up for grabs. She voted against Kavanaugh.
I'm not going to be the person who makes a decision based on whether I get 6 more years in Washington, D.C.
Kavanaugh promised to hire all female clerks if confirmed, and he has done just that, hiring 4 to clerk for him. Mola Lengi, CBS News, the White House.
And remember, Justice Kavanaugh's wife, Ashley, grew up in Abilene and is a graduate of Cooper High School. All right, still to come on Big Country Politics, Dr. Paul Ferrigio joins us in the studio breaking down issues that affect you. Stick around.